Yo. Yo. Welcome back to Son of a Preacher Man. As always, I'm your host, Soap Man's in the house. So, in my last episode, King David's son, Absalom, did the Donald Trump and attempted a January 6th coup. Although I don't know if it was really January, but it don't matter. The point is, the king's son tried to usurp the throne from his own dad. I mean, how low can you go? So, some of David's closest companions and comrades were part of the conspiracy. One of them being his top advisor, Ahithophel. That had to cut deep. The Bible says Ahithophel's counsel was as though somebody inquired at the oracle of God. What that means is David's close companion and counselor and advisor, Ahithophel, his counsel was just as good as any of the prophets of Israel. But Ahithophel gave Absalom clear, concise instructions. He says, kill the king. He says, I'm with you. We're launching this coup. We have to do it right. Kill the king. But Absalom didn't listen because David had sent in a spy. Okay? David had sent in his own counselor and spy, Hushai, his name was, the Archite. And Hushai was a counterweight to Ahithophel's wise counsel. Hushai told Absalom the usurper, nah, killing the king ain't gonna be as easy as you think. Take this time to allocate your resources and do it right. So when Ahithophel caught word that his counsel was not taken, that his instructions were not carried out, the Bible says he got his affairs in order, went home, and hanged himself. And so we pick up in this episode where we left off in the last episode. And in that last episode, a great man and a valuable asset had just taken his own life. And why? Because Ahithophel is wise. He knows you don't get a second attempt at a coup. If you're going to launch a coup, you must do it right. And the right way to do it is to kill the king. Or you don't attempt a coup. And they didn't kill the king. And so Ahithophel, being the wise man that he is, he can deduce what's coming down the pipe, and it ain't pretty. Because it's like Cersei said in the Game of Thrones series. When you play the Game of Thrones, you either win or you die. And Ahithophel seems to know the rules of the game. And so think about that for a minute. This is a very wise man, and he chooses to take his own life. Did he make the right decision? I don't know if that's ever the right decision, but let's find out what happened so that we can have 20/20 hindsight. We are in the second book of Samuel still. 2 more episodes after this one, and we'll be all done. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, son of a preacher man, proudly presents the second book of Samuel, part 13, the Comeuppance, the death of Absalom. So we're going to start off in 2 Samuel chapter 17, verses 27 through 29, and it reads, "And it came to pass when David was come to Mahanaim," and I don't know if I said that weird name right. I just tried to pronounce it how it looked. Mahanaim. You know them people talk with the back of their throat, and that's unnatural for a brother like me. Mahanaim. Mahanaim. So it came to pass when David had came to this one city named Mahanaim, that Shobi, the son of Nahash of Rabbah, of the children of Ammon, and Machir, the son of Amiel of Lodabar, and Barzillai, the Gileadite of Rogelim, brought beds and basins and earthen vessels and wheat and barley and flour and parched corn and beans and lentils and parched pulse and honey and butter and sheep and cheese of kine for David and for the people that were with him to eat. For they said, the people is hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness. No need to unpack that too much. David and his people are on the run. He's got a small band of loyal followers with him, and he's just crossed the river to escape Absalom's men, an almost certain death. So he's in the wilderness scraping up a survival, living off the land, and lo and behold, just like in last episode we saw this, we saw people coming to David's aid, unrequested, unknowingly to David. He didn't know they was coming. He didn't call them.
That's cold.
They found him, and they want to help him in his time of need. This is what it means to be David. That even when you down and out and got nowhere to turn, people remember your greatness, how cool you was. They remember how you showed them love. They remember all the great deeds you did and what made you great, and they ain't forgot. They true loyal friends looking out for David in his time of need. 2 Samuel chapter 17 verses, moving on, 2 Samuel chapter 18 verses 1 through 5. And it reads, "And David numbered the people that were with him, and set captains of thousands and captains of hundreds over them." Do I need to read that for you again? Because what I just read tells you that David's about to go on the offensive, just like Ahithophel thought. It says, "And David numbered the people that were with him." What are you doing that for? "And he set captains over thousands and captains over hundreds over them." This is what David does when he's gone to war in the past so many times. And every time David has done this, what he's doing right now, he's been successful. He's defeated his enemies. Somebody about to get a whooping. And it says, and I have in big bold red print, "And David sent forth a third part of the people under the hand of Joab, and a third part under the hand of Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and a third part under the hand of Ittai, the Gittite. And the king said unto the people, I will surely go forth with you, myself also. But the people answered, Thou shalt not go forth, for if we flee away, thou wilt not care for us. But now thou art worth 10,000 of us. Therefore now it is better that thou succor us out of the city. And the king said unto them, What seemeth you best I will do. And the king stood by the gate side, and all the people came out by the hundreds and by thousands. and I have in big bold red print. And the king commanded Joab and Abishai and Ittai, saying, deal gently for my sake with the young man, even with Absalom. And all the people heard when the king gave all the captains charge concerning Absalom. Now I need to talk about this for a minute, just what happened. But let me unpack this whole verse. David's making ready for war. He usually puts Joab at the head of his army. But Joab, remember, Joab was David's nephew and the top general in his army. But remember, Joab was one of the original conspirators. So Joab's got demoted. David gives Joab 1/3 of the army. He gives Joab's brother Abishai 1/3 of the army. And he gives Ittai the Gittite 1/3 of his army. So Joab's been demoted. He's no longer in charge of the whole army. At the end of this slide, it says, and the king commanded Joab and Abishai and Ittai. Those are his 3 captains over his army. And he says to them, deal gently with the young man, even with Absalom. David tells his commanders, deal gently with my son, meaning I want him alive. I don't want him harmed. And it goes on to say, and all the people heard when the king gave the captains charge concerning Absalom. Now I'm reading that again because we're going to come back to that very soon. I want to take a quick minute to talk about David's nephews. Abishai, Joab, and Asahel, also pronounced Asal. These are the sons of David's sister Zeruiah, and therefore they are his nephews. What I want to get across to you right now before we go any further is this. David is the youngest of 8 boys. Let me say that again. David is the youngest of 8 boys. I don't know where his sister falls in line as far as oldest to youngest. What I want you to understand is these nephews of David, though they are his nephews, they could very well be as old as David, if not older. Because David is the youngest of 8 boys. And if his sister is way older than him, she may have possibly even had her nephews before David was even born. Now, it's possible David could be older than all 3 of them if, his sister Zeruiah was younger than him. But I'm just saying, we don't know where Zeruiah falls in line in the family lineage. So these nephews of his could very well be as old as him, if not older. Once again, they are Abishai being the oldest, Joab being the middle, and Asahel or Asal being the youngest. Now here's a little chart showing you how this breaks down. Jesse was the father. He had 8 sons, David being the youngest. Zeruiah was one of his daughters. Now Abigail, I'm not sure if Abigail was a daughter by one of Jesse's concubines, because there's a verse in the Bible, I won't get into it, but it suggests that Abigail, in my opinion, it suggests that Abigail had a different mom than the other kids. And that's common back in these days. And it's common in this modern era also. So Jesse is the father. David is the son. He's got 2 sisters, Zeruiah and Abigail. And Zeruiah has 3 sons. Now, these not David's only nephews, but they're the nephews that play the biggest part in the Bible and in David's reign and the legacy he leaves behind. So Zeruiah has 3 sons, Abishai, Joab, and Asal. And David's other sister, Abigail, has a son named Amasa. And he will come into play later in the story too. Now let's talk about Abishai first. He's the oldest, according to all accounts. Abishai seems to be the oldest. And he's the most loyal. Abishai is he's not just David's nephew. He's not just a commander in David's army. He's also not just one of David's so-called infamous mighty men. He is all that, but more than anything, Abishai is a faithful, loyal companion. Remember, Abishai was the one who snuck into camp. And Abishai was the one who snuck into King Saul's camp. Remember when King Saul was chasing David through the wilderness and through the deserts and through the woods and all over Israel? And one day David snuck into King Saul's camp. And Abishai was the brave soul that went with him. And Abishai asked David, he said, "Let me smite the king, and I won't need to smite him a second time." And David didn't let him do it. And Abishai listened. Abishai wanted to just end this whole mess. But David said no. And so that was all Abishai needed to hear. And instead, David took the king's crux of water and his spear to let him know, "I could have got you. I could have faded you, but I ain't even tripped." But this is a good example of Abishai being a loyal, faithful companion. You want somebody like Abishai on your team. An attack dog that's going to attack when you tell him to attack and is not going to hesitate. But on the other hand, is going to hold his peace and heal when you tell him to hold his peace and heal. Abishai is David's light switch to turn on and off at his disposal. He is loyal. And not only that, the man is one of the best fighters on the planet. You could not ask for a better companion, for a better soldier. You cannot ask for better than Abishai. He checks all the boxes. He's practically all pluses and no minuses. Now the second nephew we gonna talk about is Asahel, also pronounced Asal. And he's the youngest of David's nephews. And he's also one of David's infamous mighty men. And he's a captain in David's army. One more special note about Asahel. One thing that makes him extremely unique is that the Bible says he was as fast as a wild roe.
That's cold.
That means a deer. Let me break down some facts for you, some scientific facts. A deer can run on average about 40 miles per hour. The claim that the Bible is making is that this man is superhumanly fast. Here we go again. We have one of the Avengers living in ancient times. Because the average top speed for a human male throughout history has been no more than 25 miles an hour. The fastest coon running from the hounds trying to take you back to bondage is only going to top out at about 25 miles an hour. Usain Bolt, the Jamaican phenom, does not run any faster than about 25 miles an hour. He might hit 26 miles an hour on his best day in life. But a wild roe, a deer, no matter what kind of deer you talking about, some of them go a little faster than 40 miles an hour, but on average, a deer runs about 40 miles an hour. Impossible. What the Bible is claiming is impossible to the science that we are familiar with. Men don't run 40 miles an hour. But the Bible says Asahel was as fast as a wild roe. He was special. He was superhuman. So Asahel, as talented as he was, there are many people with many talents, okay, in life. And just because God blessed you with a gift, you can't be all high and mighty. And I'm not saying Asahel was this way. I'm just saying in general. Just because God bless you with a gift, don't mean he ain't blessed other people with gifts. And Asahel went barking up the wrong tree when he picked a fight with a rival general named Abner. And Abner warned Asahel. He told Asahel, stop chasing me. Get out from behind me. Leave me alone. He said, this ain't what you want. Da, 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 but this ain't what you want. Nah, brother, this ain't what you want. He tried to tell Asahel. But Asahel, probably confident in his own ability, kept chasing after Abner. But Abner pulled a fast one on him. And he stabbed Asahel with the butt of his spear. Most likely tricked him, caught him slipping. See, Abner was an old head. He was an old general. He was an old lion. He had seen all the tricks of the trade. He had seen young upstarts like Asahel come and go his whole life. And you got to respect people's experience. What's the old saying? Experience is the best teacher. And Abner was a legend in his own right. He was a brilliant strategist and military commander. But he was fighting for King Saul. So he was a rival of David and his men. And Asahel, I don't know if he was trying to make a name for himself or he was just really pissed off or really didn't like Abner. But he bit off more than he could chew that day. That's the point I'm trying to make. He bit off more than he could chew. He was barking up the wrong tree. And so Asahel died young. And it just goes to show, even though David got these spectacular mighty men around him, they are not invincible. Now, the last nephew we gonna talk about is the middle child, Joab. And I went out of order for a reason. I saved Joab for last on purpose because Joab is a flat out trip. I gotta spend a little time talking about Joab because, man, I gotta tell you, this dude really bewilders my mind. Joab is something else. And this coming from a person, people say that about me. You ever saw a tough dude and wonder what it was to be like him? You know, growing up, I saw a lot of tough dudes. I wondered what it was to be like them. But then I also wondered, who did they think was tough? Well, that's what I feel about Joab. People done said all kind of stuff, negative stuff about me in my day. They didn't call me shady. They didn't call me underhanded. They didn't call me something else. They didn't call me cold-hearted. But you know who I think is all those things? Joab. Here's the funny thing about Joab. He is, first of all, he's David's #1 pick for a general. And rightfully so, because Joab is a brilliant general. He is who you want heading your army because Joab is going to get the job done. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And he's going to do it how you want it done. David has Joab in command because Joab does the things that David likes. He does things the way David would do them. David is pleased with the job that Joab does. Also, Joab does David's dirty work for him. When David committed the ultimate sin of killing his own man and hero in his army, Uriah the Hittite, Guess who was David's cat's paw? Guess who David used to do his dirty work? It was Joab. And guess who was delighted to do it for David? Joab. He had absolutely no problem and has absolutely no problem carrying out whatever command that Joab has absolutely no problem carrying out whatever command David gives him. It can never be too majestic or admirable, and it can never be too low down and dirty. It does not matter to Joab. He is a special character like that. He really is. The only person that Joab is more loyal to than David is Joab. Let me say that again. The only person that Joab is more loyal to, other than David, nobody's more loyal to David except Joab's brother Abishai. And the reason for that is, the reason Joab is not more loyal than Abishai is because the number one person that Joab is loyal to is Joab. David comes second to Joab's loyalty to himself, but he is in fact a loyal and good commander and general. He's an excellent fighter. Would you expect him to be? He's a Saul and Abishai's brother. All three of them were David's mighty men. He's an excellent combatant. When he goes to war, he leads his men into battle and he fights also. The man can fight. There's no question about that. But Joab is loyal to Joab. Joab loves being the commander of David's army. And in my opinion, it's because Joab feels he's in a position where he can play kingmaker. See, the commander of the head general, the top general of the army is in a very unique position. He's not in line to be king, and I don't think Joab wants to be king. But he has significant influence on the king. He has significant influence on who becomes the king. He has the king's ear. It's a nice position to be in. And he's comfy in that position. He's been in that position for a long time. He likes that position. And here's the most important thing I'm going to say. He'll do anything. He'll do anything to keep it. Joab will do anything to keep his position as the top general in David's army. And here's another thing. If everything goes to hell in a handbag and all the king and all the king's sons get killed, guess who becomes king? The top general. But I don't think Joab is aiming for the throne. Joab became one of the conspirators with Absalom because Joab killed Abner. Remember we said Abner killed Saul, which is Joab's brother. I don't fault Abner for killing Saul. He warned him. He told him, leave me alone, quit following me, quit chasing me. He told him, this ain't what you want. He told him, this ain't what you want, brother. Saul didn't listen, he paid the price. But that didn't go well with Joab, of course. Abner killing his brother. So Abner and King David eventually made peace. Because Abner fell out. King Saul ended up dying. Abner, being his top general, became the top general for Saul's son Ishbosheth. But Abner fell out with Ishbosheth because Ishbosheth came to Abner and said, I heard you was sleeping with one of my daddy's concubines.
That's cold.
And so Abner fell out with Saul's son Ishbosheth, and he went and made peace with David. Well, when Joab found out that the would-be King David made peace with Abner, he called Abner for a secret meeting. When he saw Abner, he walked up to Abner and gave him a hug as though they were friends, then pulled out a sword or a knife or a dagger and stabbed him and killed him. And he did it to avenge his brother Saul. So that's what I mean. Joab's loyalties are unto himself first. He did not care that that was going to piss David off. He didn't care that was going to piss his uncle off. He didn't care. He didn't care that that was going to piss his future king off. He did not care that that was going to compromise and put in jeopardy what David was trying to do. He did not care. He put his wants and needs above David's wants and needs. And I can understand that. The dude killed his brother. But that did piss David off. And David, really, Joab fell out of David's good graces when he murdered Abner. And that really bothered David. One more thing to note about these brothers. These brothers are a problem for David. Let me emphasize that for 2 minutes before we go any further. These three brothers these three brothers and nephews of David. These three nephews of David. David, on more than one account, prays to God for help in dealing with his nephews. He says, "Oh God, oh Lord, what am I to do with the sons of Zeruiah? They are too hard for me." For these words to come out of David's mouth speak volumes about his nephews. In my opinion, his nephews are little versions of himself. They are little devils. They are little clever, devious Davids. And they're too much for him to handle. But they are also an invaluable asset to his forces. These are guys, they're cold-blooded killers, but they're the type of guys you want on your team. So Joab murders Abner, and that doesn't sit well with David, and Joab knows it. And so I believe Joab knows that he's fell out of grace with David and that David is going to eventually punish him for that. And I believe that's why Joab joins the conspiracy with Absalom. That's why he buddies up to Absalom. Because he knows David is old and that it's going to probably be a new king in his lifetime. And he wants to escape justice. He doesn't want to get punished for the murder of Abner. And I believe that's why he is originally part of the conspiracy with David's son Absalom. Another thing about Joab, he covets that top general position. And Abner was a threat to that position. Let me explain something to you real quick. Abner was King Saul's top general. When King Saul died, Ishbosheth, his son, became king. Abner fell out with Ishbosheth, so he went across enemy lines and made peace with David. Now, if you Joab, put yourself in Joab's shoes. David has just made peace with a well-respected top general. That's a threat to Joab's position. Abner killed Joab's brother. So Joab doesn't need any other excuse to murder Abner. But let's be honest with one another, me and you. You don't think that crossed Joab's mind? That Abner was a threat and a rival to the position of being a top general? Once Abner made peace with David, David was going to have to pick a top general in his army. And to skip over Abner and pick Joab, some might have said that's not the wisest thing to do. Abner has more experience. Abner is a war hero. The dude is Colonel Colin Powell. Okay? He's a well-renowned man of war. He's a man of renown in his own right. Okay, I'm not going to take up too much time on that, but I want you to know that 2 Samuel chapter 18 verses 6 through 12 says, "So the people went out into the field against Israel, and the battle was in the wood of Ephraim, where the people of Israel were slain before the servants of David. And there was a great slaughter that day of 20,000 men. For the battle was there scattered over the face of all the country. And the wood devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. And Absalom met the servants of David. And Absalom rode upon a mule. And the mule went under the thick boughs of a great oak. And his head caught hold of the oak. And he was taken up between the heaven and the earth. And the mule that was under him went away. And a certain man saw it and told Joab and said, Behold, I saw Absalom hanged in an oak. And I have this in big, bold, red print. And it says, And Joab said unto the man that told him, And behold, thou sawest him, and why didst thou not smite him there to the ground? And I would have given thee 10 shekels of silver and a girdle. And it says, And the man said unto Joab, Though I should receive 1,000 shekels of silver in mine hand, yet will I not put forth mine hand against the king's son. For in our hearing the king charged thee, and Abishai, and Ittai, saying, Beware that none touch the young man Absalom. Now I have to take a couple minutes to explain to you what just happened. Okay? It says, David sent his men out to war. And it says there was a great battle in the woods of Ephraim. And it said the battle was all over the country. It was scattered all over the woods of Ephraim. And it said it was a great slaughter of 20,000 men there. 20,000 men fell. And it says that the woods themselves killed more men than the sword. So people was just dying as a result of injury from the environment more than they was actually, getting chopped in half by swords or pierced by arrows. It says, Then Absalom met the servants of David, meaning in battle. And it says, And Absalom rode upon a mule, and the mule went under the thick boughs of a great oak. And it says his hair got caught in the branches of the low-hanging branches of this great oak. If you remember, in previous episodes, we talked about what a gorgeous man Absalom was. The dude was Fabio. Okay? The dude was, I don't know, who fine nowadays? Who do all the ladies say is fine nowadays? The dude was Brad Pitt in his prime. Okay? I don't know who the ladies is saying is hot nowadays, but the dude was he was drop dead gorgeous. The Bible says from the crown of his head to the sole of his feet, not a hair was out of place. This man was physical perfection. And naturally so, David was a nice looking man. The Bible talks about how good looking David was, and so this was David's son. But the Bible suggests that he was even more beautiful than David was. And this, I believe, was one of the things that helped Absalom come to power. Anywho, one of the things that was so gorgeous about Absalom, I mean, his premier feature was his long, beautiful hair. And now that long, beautiful hair has become a burden to him. It's got him caught up. It's a negative for him in this aspect, because the Bible says during the battle, his long, beautiful locks get caught up in a great oak. And it says the mule that he was riding on runs from underneath him and leaves him hanging between the heaven and the earth. And it says one of Joab's soldiers sees him, comes back and tells Joab, I just saw Absalom hanging in a tree. So listen to what Joab says. What Joab says is, why didn't you kill him? He says, I would have rewarded you with money and given you a girdle. I would have given you 10 shekels and a girdle. Listen to the man's response to Joab, because this man does a better job than anybody, he does a better job than I ever could of showing and exposing Joab for who he really is. The man tells Joab, should you give me 1,000 shekels of silver in mine hand, yet will I not put forth mine hand against the king's son. For in our hearing, the king charged thee and Abishai and Ittai, saying, beware that none touch the young man Absalom. What this unnamed soldier is telling his general, his leader, his commander, his superior, what he's telling him is, dude, I was standing right there when the king told you and your brother and Ittai not to harm his son. I was there. I heard him tell you that. And here you are asking me, why didn't I kill the king's son? I was there when he forbade you to do that, and you don't even care. I want you to look at what Joab says next. The man says, I seen Absalom hanging in a tree. Joab says, why didn't you kill him? The guy says, because the king expressly told you and the other generals not to do that. So Absalom, the leader of the coup, the leader of the rebellion, is off hanging in a tree as this conversation is taking place. He's exposed. His beautiful locks, they've betrayed him in the worst way. He's hanging in a tree like taking candy for a baby, like taking candy from a baby. He's vulnerable in the worst way. Can you imagine? Whilst in the middle of battle, your locks get caught up in a tree, your ride ditches you, and you just sitting there hanging, feet dangling. Can you imagine? And you're the leader of this rebellion? How embarrassing. How humiliating. How ignominious. I want you to take note of Joab's response back to this unnamed soldier. Listen to what this soldier says. He continues. He says, not for 1,000 shekels of silver would I go against the king's command. He says, for I was there when the king expressly commanded you not to harm his son, Joab. And then he goes on to say in 2 Samuel chapter 18, verses 13 through 20, this unnamed soldier goes on to say, and I have in big bold red print, he says, otherwise, I should have wrought falsehood against mine own life, for there is no matter hid from the king. Here's the kicker, what he says next. He says, and thou thyself wouldest have set thyself against me. I'm going to keep going before I break this down. It says, then said Joab, I may not tarry thus with thee. And he took 3 darts in his hand and thrust them through the heart of Absalom while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak. Now I have to break down what I just read.
Freeze, that's cold.
This blows my mind, this conversation between Joab and this unnamed soldier. This unnamed soldier comes to Joab and says, I just saw Absalom, the leader of the rebellion, the king's son, hanging in a tree. Joab says, why didn't you kill him? The guy says, because the king expressly told us not to. You were there. He really told you not to. I heard him. Then this unnamed soldier goes even further. He says, not for 1,000 shekels of silver would I have done this, because the king would have caught word. He says, because nothing is hid from the king. He has too many eyes and ears everywhere. I wouldn't have got away with it. And he says, and furthermore, the king would have commanded that I would be killed. And then the soldier goes even further and says, and Joab, you would have been the one carrying out the king's command. He says, you're telling me I should have killed this dude when you know that you would have probably end up killing me for it later, and probably would have took your 10 shekels of silver back.
Freeze, that's cold.
Joab is low down and dirty. And what's Joab's response? He doesn't deny it. He says, I don't have time to talk about this right now. What was his exact words? Then said Joab, I may not tarry thus with thee. And it says, and he took 3 darts in his hand and thrust them through the heart of Absalom while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak. I kind of like this and I kind of don't like this. I like that Joab is about square business and he doesn't mess around. He wants to end the war. He wants to end the war. He wants to win. He wants to defeat David's enemies. But he wrong in that he didn't carry out the king's commands. He had Absalom. He could have easily taken him alive.
Freeze,
But he killed him.
that's cold.
Because he's a cold-blooded murderer. And Joab has no qualms about killing someone to settle a dispute. He is a cold-blooded killer. And that is how Joab settles his problems. He'll just kill you. Why waste time? Why make things complicated? He'll just kill you. So it says, and 10 young men that bear Joab's armor compassed about and smote Absalom and slew him. So Absalom wasn't dead. He was just mortally wounded. And 10 of Joab's men finished him off. It says they smote Absalom and slew him. And Joab blew the trumpet, and the people returned from pursuing after Israel. And Joab held back the people, and they took Absalom and cast him into a great pit in the wood, and laid a very great heap of stones upon him. And all Israel fled, everyone to his tent. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and reared up for himself a pillar, which is in the king's dale. For he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. And he called the pillar after his own name. And it is called unto this day Absalom's place. Then said Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, Let me now run and bear the king tidings, how that the Lord hath avenged him of his enemies. And Joab said unto him, Thou shalt not bear tidings this day, but thou shalt bear tidings another day. But this day shalt thou bear no tidings, because the king's son is dead. So let's unpack this real quick. Once again, Absalom, being Absalom, puts his affairs in front of the king's. The king expressly told Joab to his face to spare his son, and Joab does the exact opposite. He murders Absalom. The Bible says he sticks 3 darts through the man and lets his men finish him off. A brutal death for the king's son, Absalom. And a lot of people may say, hey, he had it coming. He had it coming. But you have still disobeyed the king. And Joab's no fool. He knows the king is going to be pissed off. And Joab has found himself on the receiving end of the king's ire in times past. So Absalom is dead, and the king don't know it. And one of the men say, let me go run and bring the king tidings. Joab says, nah, we better hold off news of this. You stay put. 2 Samuel chapter 18 verses 21 through 27 reads, Then says Joab to Cushai, Go, tell the king what thou hast seen. And Cushai bowed himself unto Joab and ran. Then said Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, yet again to Joab, But howsoever, let me, I pray thee, also run after Cushai. And Joab said, Wherefore wilt thou run, my son, seeing that thou hast no tidings ready? But howsoever, said he, let me run. And he said unto him, Run. Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain and overran Cushai. And David sat between the 2 gates. And the watchman went up to the roof over the gate unto the wall, and lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man running alone. And the watchman cried and told the king. And the king said, If he be alone, there is tidings in his mouth. And he came apace and drew near. And the watchman called unto the porter and said, Behold, another man running alone. And the king said, He also bringeth tidings. And the watchman said, Methinketh the running of the foremost is like the running of Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok. And the king said, He is a good man, and cometh with good tidings. And Ahimaaz called and said unto the king, All is well. And he fell down to the earth upon his face before the king, and said, Blessed be the Lord thy God, which hath delivered up the men that lifted up their hand against my lord the king. And the king said, and I have this in big bold red print, it's the first question King David asked. It says, and the king said, Is the young man Absalom safe? Asking about his son, of course. And Ahimaaz answered, When Joab sent the king's servant, and me thy servant, I saw a great tumult, but I knew not what it was. And the king said unto him, Turn aside and stand here. And he turned aside and stood by. And behold, Cushai came. And Cushai said, Tidings, my lord the king. For the Lord hath avenged thee this day of all them that rose up against thee. And the king said unto Cushai, and I have in big bold red print, Is the young man Absalom safe? This is important to the king, obviously. And Cushai answered, The enemies of my lord the king, and all that rise against thee to do thee hurt, be as that young man is. And the king was much moved, and went up to the chamber over the gate, and wept. And as he went, he said, O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would God I had died for thee, O Absalom, my son, my son. The king is obviously devastated at the news of his son, at the news that his son is dead. He's devastated. But he doesn't know Joab was behind it yet. He doesn't know this wily fox, Joab, this same person who, though is an asset to him, has caused him much grief in the past. He's prayed to God for help concerning Joab and his brothers before. And here we go, merry-go-round, right back where we started. Joab. Joab then murdered somebody. What else is new? You think he'd be used to it by now? The sons of Zeruiah are always murdering somebody. And David is always weeping behind their exploits. Joab in particular. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the part of this episode where I thank you for joining me for this past 57 minutes. If you got any comments, compliments, insults, or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section. Yo, in this episode, we talked about a pillar that Absalom erected during his lifetime. And that pillar does, in fact, still exist. That pillar that the Bible talks about is indeed in Israel to this day. And I didn't have a slide of it this episode, but I promise in the next episode to show you a slide of Absalom's pillar, because I've seen it. It's still in Israel, and the people that are native to that land know that that's Absalom's pillar. Anywho, ladies and gentlemen, you could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me. And I want to thank you for spending this time with your boy. I'll see you next episode, same soap time, same soap channel, Soap Man.